Assalamualaikum students, this video is question 5 part A and that is from November 2023 exam series paper 22. That is paper 2 of variant 2 of paper 2, 9708 A level economics. It's part A question, it has 8 marks. With the help of diagrams, explain one reason for increase in aggregate demand and one reason for increase in aggregate supply. And consider whether increase in aggregate demand will always lead to inflation. As we always tell you about the marks distribution, assessment objective 1, knowledge understanding 3 marks, assessment objective 2, analysis 3 marks, and assessment objective 3, evaluation 2 marks. So first we talk about the assessment objective knowledge understanding and how can we get 3 marks for that. So what the first thing we need to do is to explain the two terms which are aggregate demand and aggregate supply in this question. So aggregate demand is equal to consumption. The abbreviation is C plus investment. Abbreviation is I plus government spending. Abbreviation is G plus exports. The abbreviation is X, and all these expenditures, from all these expenditures, imports which are denoted by M are deducted. So we can get 1 mark by giving this explanation of aggregate demand. That aggregate demand has 4 components: consumption expenditures, investment expenditures, government expenditures, and net exports, which are exports minus imports. For the second mark, we need to give the definition for AS. Aggregate supply is the total output producers in a country are willing to produce at given prices during a year or during a period of time. So this is the second knowledge understanding mark. So 1 mark for explaining AD, 1 mark for explaining AS. And the third mark, since the question says using a diagram or more than one diagram, so in the for the third knowledge understanding mark, let's draw a macro curve, macro ADAS curve. Please be very careful and do not confuse micro and macro diagrams. On long x-axis, please write real GDP or national income. Do not write quantity. You won't get the marks if your diagram is incorrectly labeled. Along y-axis, price or P is not acceptable. You must write price level. AD slopes downward and it must be labeled as AD and not just simple demand curve. Upward rising AS, and it's still not complete. To complete the diagram, kindly show the equilibrium point. Equilibrium quantity is Y naught and equilibrium price level is P naught, and unless you show the equilibrium point, the diagram will not be complete. So that is the third knowledge understanding mark. So out of 3 knowledge marks, we've got all 3. Now we can use the same diagram to show the shifts in AD and AS, which is the analysis part, or we can make separate diagrams for shifts in AD and AS. I will make separate diagrams so that it's easier and more convenient for you for your understanding. There is another term used in the question, and that is inflation. There is no need to give the definition for inflation, but to be on a safer side, if I am in your place and taking this exam, I will also give the definition for inflation. So the rule that must be followed, that all terms used in the statement of the question must be defined to score knowledge understanding mark. So we can write the definition of inflation as well. Inflation is a sustained, unless you word use sustained or persistent, you cannot get the definition mark for inflation. It is a sustained increase in general price level over a period of time. Now that is a completely correct definition. If someone writes inflation is increase in general price level over a period of time, the definition will not be considered as a completely accurate one. So there must be a reference to time period. There must be a reference to persistent or sustained. As prices go up and go down immediately, that won't be inflation. Inflation is when prices go up and they stay at a higher level. So this is knowledge understanding but optional. There won't be any marks for this. We now move on to the second assessment objective, and that is analysis. For analysis marks, we need to give one reason for a shift in AD or increase in AD and one reason for a shift or increase in AS. So AD may go up, AD may rise if interest rates fall. Now we have identified a possible cause of increase in AD, but we need to develop it as well to get full marks. Identification of reason may not give us full marks. So AD may rise if interest rates fall. We can get a knowledge understanding mark only by identifying a reason. AS may rise due to a fall in cost of production. So we have identified the reasons, and what we can do that we can make two separate diagrams, and let me create a space here. Diagram 1 and over here diagram, actually we can say diagram 2, and we can call it diagram 1, and the diagram we have already made could be diagram 1. So a rightward shift in AD real GDP, again, it's very important that you label the diagrams accurately and completely. AD, AS do show the initial equilibrium point, and AD shifts to the right, the price level goes up, and the real GDP goes up as well. Now this is diagram 2. We now draw diagram 3. Again, ADAS, initial equilibrium, label y-axis as well as x-axis. AS shifts to the right, arrow, lower price level, higher income. So this is diagram 3. Now if we draw both, show both shifts accurately, completely accurate diagrams, we get the second analysis mark. We get the second analysis mark. So one mark we have scored by identifying a reason of a shift in either AD or AS, and the second mark is for showing a rightward shift in AD and showing a rightward shift in AS. All these three diagrams could be part of one diagram. You can show only one diagram, and you can show rightward shift as well as rightward shift in AD as well as rightward shift in AS. But I made three separate diagrams. For the third mark, you need to give the explanation for the reasons of shifts in changes. For the reason of shifts or increase in AD and AS. So one mark for identifying a reason in both AD and AS, 1 mark for a shift for a diagram which shows rightward shift in AD as well as a rightward shift in AS, and the third mark for explaining the reason. Lower interest rates reduce cost of borrowing and reward for saving. Consumption, especially of, it's very important you mention this, consumption of, especially of non-essential high-priced items rise and raises AD, since consumption is a part of AD. So we have given an explanation. So we now deserve the third analysis mark. So let me repeat, how do you get 3 analysis marks? 1 mark for identifying a cause of increase in AD as well as a cause of increase in AS. Second mark, use the diagram to show a rightward shift in AD and a rightward shift in AS. You can show it in one diagram or 2 different diagrams. And third mark, explain the reason. Why would AD go up or why would AS go up? Either of the 2 reasons need to be explained. So that's how you get 3 analysis mark. So price level rises when AD rises. Price level falls when AS rises. So we have actually looked at these diagrams. In diagram 2, AD is rising and price level is going up. In diagram 3, AS is rising but price level is going down. So in evaluation, the third assessment objective, increase in AD will raise price level / inflation, because the question used the word inflation. Increase in AD will raise price level inflation if increase in AD is larger than increase in AS. Now this is good for 1 evaluation mark. That we have said that AD increase will not necessarily lead to a higher price level. If AD is going up and AS is going up as well, price level is moving in opposite directions and price level may not actually go up. Price level will go up only when increase in AD is bigger than the increase in AS. And then we need to give a conclusion. Therefore, now we are giving the conclusion. Therefore, increase in AD will not always lead to inflation. Now that is the statement. If you look at the question once again, and the line, consider whether an increase in AD will always lead to inflation. Now this part of the question is evaluation. And we are giving the conclusion, no, increase in AD will not always lead to inflation. So that's how we'll get the last mark available for this question, and that's how we'll get 8 out of 8. I hope you are understanding this. There is an alternative approach you can use in evaluation, and that is that the impact of increase in AD on price level depends on available excess capacity. So available excess capacity. If excess capacity is available and AS is horizontal, in this case increase in AD will not lead to inflation. But if excess capacity is not available, an economy is operating at full employment, AS is vertical, in that case, increase in AD will lead to higher inflation, higher price level. So an alternative approach can be taken for evaluation marks that the impact of increase in AD on price level depends upon the available excess capacity. In economies where excess capacity and unemployed resources are available, increase in AD is more likely to raise real GDP. As in the case of this diagram, we can say is diagram 4, and impact on price level would be uncertain. On the other hand, if there is an economy which is operating above full employment or at full employment, if AD goes up in that economy and there is no excess capacity to meet their extra demand, the price level will go up as shown in this diagram 5. And again, you must give a conclusion that increase in AD will not always lead to inflation. I hope you found this video useful. Please do subscribe our channel. Thank you very much.